Okay, today we're going to read chapter 22, Ready for the Rally. This is the Liberation of Gabriel King, and we're on page 136. Every day after that, remember, what happened was they got in a fight because Gabe said their list wasn't working and that he wasn't going to 5th grade, and Frida said, well, I'm not staying in 4th grade with you, and they had a fight. So chapter 22, Ready for the Rally. Every day after that, I stood next to the telephone, my hand on the receiver, but I never did call Frida. I thought about the liberating me and Frida had done over the summer, and I wish it had made a difference. But I still didn't want to go to 5th grade. Maybe Frida would change her mind, or maybe she'd be better off without me. We'd both broken our pinky swears, thanks to Duke, so who knew what else could happen? I had a real bad feeling in my stomach, and it only got worse as the rally got closer. Pop and Terrence and Mr. and Mrs. Wilson sat in the living room almost every night, but Frida didn't come with me. She stayed with Great Aunt Alma, even though she and Frida had hardly got along. I listened to our families planning everything out. We've got permission to use the elementary school we set up in the back where the kids had their moving up day. How's the speech coming, Alan? Terrence, you take the Peace Warriors out knocking on doors, making sure folks are coming. It was all business. I sat outside on the front steps wishing Frida was here. Sometimes Mama would bring out lemonade when we sit side by side real quiet. You and Frida in a fight, she asked me once, but I shrugged. Wasn't exactly a fight. I just wasn't sure what it was. Mama kissed me on the head. These things happen, she told me. You'll get past it. Right now, Frida's busy helping her daddy get ready for the rally. She probably needs a little bit more time on her own. Soon as it settles down, you'll be buddies again. Best buddies again. But Mom didn't know everything. Soon as it settled down, it'd be time to go for school, and I'd have to make my decision once and for all. I thought I might talk to Pop about it, but he was too busy practicing his speech. Seemed like all he did now was read it in the mirror and change stuff he said that he'd already written. I'd say, want me to send the steps before the Wilsons get here? And he'd say, not right now, I gotta fix this paragraph. I thought we might watch the news together and get all riled up about politics, but the only politics Pop was interested in were the ones right here in Hollowell. I finally settled on talking to the cows. I'd gotten real friendly with the cow who swatted her ear at me. Even though she didn't say much, she was a decent listener. I walked down the old dirt road one night after dinner and planted myself next to the cotton field. Sun was setting and the sky was pink and starting to smell like August. I sure miss Frida, I told the cow. There's no one to make obstacle courses with or to ride bikes with. Nobody walks into town with me or jumps off the rope swings. I paused. Life is sure plain. A wind blew through the cotton, rustling the stalks. Think I should go to 5th grade, I asked. The cow's tail swished back and forth. But what if something happens? What if Duke does something mean? I thought of 100 horrible things that could happen. What if he's mad about the rally and takes it out on us? Frida will need to watch out for herself, don't you think? I studied the cow's face real careful to see what she was thinking, but the eyelids just drooped and she chewed on a patch of grass. Fine, I said, lying back in the cotton. That's easy for you to say. You're a cow, but I'm a chicken. A body just can't stop being a chicken. I waited for the cow to argue with me. Maybe she'd say something. You can do it, Gabriel King. You just got to have faith. But that cow didn't say anything. And after that, neither did I. Things couldn't be good when you were talking to a cow. Sometimes I wonder what might have happened if I hadn't been for Terrence. Well, Terrence and Pop, I mean. It was the night before the rally, and the Wilsons were over at my trailer again, going over the final details with Mama and Pop. I'd taken to sitting outside with Jimmy while they talked. Partly because it made my stomach feel funny to think about everything that was going to happen, but mostly because I couldn't stand the Wilsons without Frida. I couldn't stand to see the Wilsons without Frida. Mr. and Mrs. Wilson never said a word, but I knew they were wondering how come Frida had suddenly taken a liking to Great Aunt Alma. That night, I was sitting outside in my overalls with the bare feet tickling the grass, trying to catch a cricket for Jimmy's dinner when the front door slammed open. Mama and Pop never slammed the door, and it was way too early for the Wilsons to be leaving, so I looked up. There was Terrence standing on my front step. He sure looked tall, staring down at me. His legs were solid like tree trunks, and his afro was all poofed around his head. He had on a t-shirt that says, Power to the People, and for a minute I felt scared of him, just like I used to. But then he sat down beside me, and it was just Terrence again, Frida's big brother who had made pounding fun. What are you doing, twerp? Terrence asked. I put the cover back in Jimmy's tank. Nothing. What's up with you and Frida? I didn't expect that question because everyone else was just tiptoeing around the subject, but I guess Terrence wasn't like everybody else. I shrugged. She doesn't want to see me, Terrence snorted. Well, that ain't true, he said. She couldn't get more miserable if she tried. Moping around the house all week, always hanging around the basement, driving me crazy. He sounded real annoyed, but only part way. I sat up a little bit, though. I sat up just a bit. Really? I asked, but Terrence just scowled. Listen, he said, I've got something to tell you. I've made up my mind. I'm moving to Atlanta as soon as this rally's over. My grin faded. Atlanta, yep. He said, I'm going to live with my Uncle Rory and get a job in the city. Doing what? I asked, but this time it was Terrence who shrugged. Who knows, he said, but I can't wait around here my whole life. Sometimes you got to take a chance. He looked at me real steady, and then he reached into his pockets. I got something for you, and it's important, so you better pay attention. Terrence took out a crumpled piece of paper and pressed it hard in my palm, then closed my fingers around it into a fist. He held them close tight for just a minute. You wouldn't have been my first choice for Frida's best friend, he said, but you're okay. You've got potential, just don't screw it up. Then Terrence let go and stood up. See you at the rally. He disappeared back inside the house, and I stared at the paper in my fist. Terrence had never given me anything before, and I couldn't imagine what it was. One by one, I peeled away my fingers, then I smoothed out the paper. On it was Frida's handwriting. My fearless Frida Wilson. So we remember, we don't really know what's on her list, and we're going to finally find out. Number 1, the Ku Klux Klan. Number 2, Mr. Evans. Number 3, the rope swing, but that one's crossed out. Number 4, kissing. Number 5, roller skating on the yellow line. That one's crossed out. Number 6, Brussels sprouts, crossed out. Number 7, the Evans trailer, crossed out. Number 8, dying. Number 9, Terrence leaving home. Number 10, not having Gabe with me in the 5th grade. I stared at that paper so long I thought my eyes might weld themselves to it. I had never seen Frida's whole list before. I wondered where Terrence had gotten it, but from the looks of it, he pulled it out of the trash. I read it over and over again, but mostly I read the last 2. Terrence leaving home and not having Gabe with me in the 5th grade. Maybe Frida really did need me. I was still sitting there staring at it when the Wilsons left for the night. Terrence didn't even look at me. He just climbed in the car and started the engine while Mr. and Mrs. Wilson said their goodbyes. See you tomorrow, Gabe, Mrs. Wilson said, ruffling my hair as she walked past. That's right, Mr. Wilson. Tomorrow's the big day. Frida sure will be excited to see you. But they were being extra nice, but I hardly noticed. All I could think about was Frida's list. I listened to the rumble of their car driving away, but I still didn't get up. I stayed out there until it got dark. Then I folded the list up and put it in my pocket. I stood outside my front door, watching the way the light from the inside spilled out into the steps. I could hear Mama and Papa's voice carrying softly. Part of me wanted to stand there forever. Part of me knew it was time to go in. I walked inside and let the front door shut with a snap. Pop was standing in the living room in his fancy clothes. Do you think I should wear this striped tie? He was asking Mama. She gave him that look that said, quit asking me, because Pop had probably asked a million times already, and it was the only tie he owned, so pretty much he had to wear that or no matter what. Pop held up the tie to his shirt and turned from side to side. I missed his work pants and clumpy old work boots, but I bet he missed them too because he looked real uncomfortable. I don't know, he said, itching his collar. It's old and sure doesn't go with this shirt. I bet the other men will be all dressed nice. I heard the mayor's going to be there in the TV crews. I put Jimmy's tank on the counter and Pop studied his reflection in the glass. What do you think, Jimmy? He asked, leaning in. Think Gabe's Pop is going to make a fool out of himself? Mama sighed. She glanced at me and I waited for her to say something encouraging, but she slipped out of the room instead. I thought about how nervous Pop was, and for the first time ever, I realized that maybe he needed me too. You'll be great, Pop, I said, just like Jimmy Carter. Pop sighed and set down the tie. Maybe I should stay home, he said. There will be plenty of speeches without mine. Who needs another speech? I heard Pop's speech so many times I could practically recite it myself, but it was a darn good one. Made me feel braver every time. I tried to think of how I explained that to Pop, but it turns out I didn't have to because Mom slid up behind him. She reached around his waist and handed him a long, thin box with a gold bow on it. I wasn't going to give it to you until tomorrow, she said. Then she laughed. Finally, she said, open it. Pop fumbled with the fancy bow, but Mom leaned her chin on his shoulder and waited real patient while he pulled off the top. I stood on my tiptoes to see what was inside. It was a brand new tie with a shiny golden tie clip. Nicer than any tie I'd ever seen. Pop stared at Mama like he couldn't believe it. We don't have the money for this, he said, but Mama's face was soft like she knew he was going to say that. I stayed up, she said. I put aside a little of the grocery money every week. You're going to look so handsome on that stage, she kissed Pop on the cheek. It's real nice, Pop said, his eyes glistening. He set the tie in the box extra careful, then swung Mama like they were dancing. For the first time since the bicentennial, he laughed. Gaby said, put on some music. I climbed over the couch and turned on the record player. And the music came on real loud, but no one said to turn it down. Instead, Pop dipped Mama low. Who's afraid of a silly speech, he said loud above the music. He twirled her around the living room. Who's afraid of being a fool? Mama laughed, and her face glowed like a full moon. Who's afraid of the Ku Klux Klan? Pop asked me and Mama both yelled, not us. Then Pop picked me up, and we all three twirled around until we fell on the couch. We lay there laughing and listening to the music fill up our trailer. Everything's gonna be all right, Pop said at last, and finally I knew he was right. Then he said something I'll never forget. Ain't nothing so scary when you've got people you love, Pop said. Right then, I knew I found my courage. It was like a lock found its key and sprung open. I like that saying. It's like a lock found its key and sprung open. All this time I've been trying not to be scared, and it turns out all I had to do was be brave. Wasn't nothing going to keep 5th grade from being scary, but there wasn't nothing going to keep me from my best friend either. That's what being brave was all about. And I said we were going to read chapter 22, but chapter 23 is the end of the book, and it's just a few pages, so I'm going to finish the book. Chapter 23, Ain't Nothing So Scary. The next morning I got up and dressed as fast as I'd ever done it. When I got out of the kitchen, Pop was putting on a brand new tie. Boy, did he look sharp. Mr. Wilson called. He was saying to Mama, there's a rumor floating around that Jimmy Carter himself is coming to the rally. They're expecting an overflow crowd. Pop looked at me. Don't get your hopes up, he said. But he is home in Plains, which isn't too far from here. I rubbed my eyes. Jimmy Carter coming to our rally? That seemed near impossible, but after the summer, who knew what could happen? We got to go right now, I said, stuffing down my toast and tugging on Papa's sleeve. I said, not to get your hopes up, Papa reminded me. But it wasn't Jimmy Carter I couldn't wait to see. It was Frida Wilson. Me and Mama and Pop took the truck to the elementary school where they were setting up, and it was ever crowded. Looking like a crowd at the bicentennial, only this time we'd be making our own fireworks. Come on, Mama said, taking my hand and Pop's hand in hers. Let's find the Wilsons. We went back to the schoolyard. At first I couldn't see Frida in the crowd, but then I spotted her. She was standing up front with her daddy, and she sure looked pretty. Her hair was all done with bows, and she was smiling huge at the adults. Her mama motioned us over. This is Mr. and Mrs. King, Mrs. Wilson said to the others when they got close. They're Gabriel's parents. Then Mama and Papa were shaking hands and saying hello, and it didn't matter that we lived in the smallest trailer in Hallowell Trailer Park. They looked just like real politicians. Huh, I thought. Guess that's how a former peanut farmer got to run for president of the United States. I tugged on Frida's sleeve. Hey, I said, I gotta tell you something. Frida's eyes looked hopeful. What is it? She asked, but I didn't want to tell her around the adults. Want to sit under the picnic table? Frida thought it over. I guess so, she said, for a minute. We wove in and out around the crowd until we found our table, but this time we didn't crawl underneath like we usually did. We sat on top and swung our legs down. Frida, I said at last, I changed my mind. About what? She asked, even though I suspected she knew. The 5th grade, I said, I'm going. Frida's face split into a grin. For real? I stopped, crossed my heart, and spit on the ground. Then I did it, so Frida knew I meant it. For real. She swung her feet and said to me real good. Gabe, she asked, what finally made you brave? I knew the answer, but I wasn't sure how to explain it, so I just shrugged. You did. 'Cause of liberating? Sort of. Frida grinned again, and we sat there just quiet, just me and her, and thought how this really was the best summer ever. Frida Wilson, I said, you're my best friend. Frida looked at me, and I knew she meant it back, but she didn't have a chance to say it because the microphone screeched in the distance. Mr. Wilson was asking everyone to sit down. Frida hopped off the picnic table. Come on, she said. Terrence is saving me a seat on the bleachers. Top row, want to come? There was a time when the top of the row of the bleachers wouldn't have been on my list if I thought of it, but I hopped down. Yup, I said. You could hear Mr. Wilson introducing all the people who would be speaking at the rally. Mayor Roberts, Reverend Jordan, Alan King. I listened to the crowd clapping for Pop, and I was real proud. I bet he was nervous up there on the stage, but he wasn't. He was doing it anyway, just like me in the 5th grade. I let loose one of my super duper whistles. Then me and Frida got ready to make a beeline for the bleachers, only that's when we got waylaid one last time. I don't know what made me turn around and look under the farthest picnic table at the edge of the schoolyard. Maybe it was because I suspected me and Frida wouldn't come here to hide out anymore after this. Not when we'd been the West Wing 5th graders. I wanted to take one last look at what had been our spot, only this time I saw something I hadn't counted on. Way in the back, under the picnic table closest to the school building, there were 2 people hiding out. I could see them clearly, even though they looked like they were far away. I poked Frida in the ribs. Look, I said. There were Duke and Frankie. For a minute, my heart beat fast, just like it always did. But then I realized which of us was hiding out and which of us had most of Rockford and Hallowell behind us. I remember what Mrs. Wilson had said about people coming to the rally to report back. I don't know how I knew it, but right then I was 100% certain that Mr. Evans and Mr. Carmen were nowhere nearby. They put Duke and Frankie up to coming in here instead, and that struck me as extra chicken. I looked at Frida, and Frida looked at me, and I knew we were thinking the exact same thing. We could get Duke and Frankie in some trouble if we wanted to. All we have to do is tell Terrence they were here, or maybe someone scream or yell for an adult. Frida could even whoop them herself if she wanted to, but that's not what we did. Ready to go, Frida asked. Yup, I said. You think Jimmy Carter will show up today? Maybe, said Frida, but either way, it's sure a good crowd. I think just about everyone in Hallowell and Rockford showed up. She grinned and looked back at Duke and Frankie. They'll show any Evans to call me, and I'm not going to say it, but the N-word. She said. I thought, yup, that was some true. You sure did not mess with Frida Wilson. Frida got set to run, because remember, the reason they're all there is because he said that to her, called her the N-word, and he said something about the Ku Klux Klan coming to her house, so then this was like kind of like them saying, we're not scared. Then me and her took off in the cloud of dust, and I imagined what our feet must look like to Duke and Frankie watching us from way back under the picnic table. For a minute, I almost felt sorry for them stuck under there hiding out. Then I was running fast, climbing the bleachers, and Terrence was making his friends squish over so me and Frida could squeeze in. Then Mr. Wilson was introducing my pop for real, and he was standing up there in his brand new tie with a shiny tie clip, and I was standing up to wave at him so he could remember that there ain't nothing so scary when you got someone you love. That's when I thought about Duke and Frankie one last time, and this time I didn't feel scared or mad or sorry for them. I hoped that maybe someday someone would liberate them too. Then maybe they'd figure out what love and courage were all about, and life would spring open like a lock had found its key. I'm going to read that paragraph one last time. That's when I thought about Duke and Frankie one last time. And this time I didn't feel scared or mad or sorry for them. I hoped that maybe someday someone would liberate them too. Then maybe they'd figure out what love and courage were all about, and life would spring open like a lock had found its key. And that's the end of the book. And I'm going to read his What I'm Afraid of list. I'm not going to read every number because that would get annoying. But this is What I'm Afraid of by Gabriel King, and it goes from 1 to 38. 5th grade, Duke Evans, Frankie Carmen, spiders, alligators, Terrence, losing mama or pop. Frida's basement, earwig pinchers, loose cows, getting lost in the swamp, swinging off the rope swing, missing the school bus. Big trucks and mean truck drivers, falling into the toilet. Robbers, teachers who yell a lot. Centipedes, that he spelled wrong. The old dirt road, getting eaten by buzzards. The Evans trailer, ghosts. Frida being mad at me. Clumps of 6th graders, getting my hand chopped off in mama's new blender, being pounded. Roller skating on the highway like on that TV show. Calling a teacher mama by accident. Never getting any taller. Finding a worm in my sandwich. Being locked in the bathroom at school. Not being picked for gym teams. Killer robots. Falling off a high branch of a pecan tree. Corpses, tornadoes, wars like Vietnam. Raccoons, especially when they sound like bears outside our tent. And that's the end of this book. So hopefully you liked it. Bye.